So the game I'm playing today is called Excitebike for the NES. We're going to be checking out one of my favorite retro racing games today, or I guess technically revisiting one of my favorite retro racing games. Excitebike has popped up on my channel in the past. You may recall that I did some corruptions of this game back in episode 39 of my ROM corruption series, which is the most recent one, and also the final one because I have no plans on ever bringing that series back. And for a brief moment I also featured it in part 3 of that series. But much like RC Pro-Am 2, I had never made just a regular video of Excitebike where I just sit down and play the game normally, so I wanted to finally try and change that as well. So Excitebike, as the title would insinuate, is a bike racing game that is probably exciting. I don't know, excitement is subjective, so I guess it depends on the person playing the game. It was developed and published by Nintendo and was originally released for the Famicom in Japan in 1984, and it would later make its way overseas in North America in 1985 and Europe in 1986. It was a fairly innovative racing game for its time because not only did it feature computer opponents, but it also featured a level editor that you could use to design your own tracks. And you had the ability to save tracks as well, except you could only save one track, and if you wanted to create a new one, you had to get rid of the old one, so that was the only downside. Excitebike would go on to become somewhat of a successful franchise. I mean, there weren't that many games that this ended up spawning. I do know that there is more than one Excitebike game, because there was also Versus Excitebike, which was like an arcade port of the NES version. It wasn't entirely identical though. Then I think there was like a 16-bit remake that later followed sometime in the 90s, but I don't remember what it was called. And there was also Excitebike 64, which was the first 3D entry in the franchise. Excitebike was a game that I played very often on the Super Joy bootleg console that I had made some mentions of in some of my previous videos, but it was also featured as a hidden game in Animal Crossing. The original Animal Crossing had all of those hidden NES games that you could find. One of those games was Excitebike. I'm not sure if I managed to find it on an older save, because I don't have it on my current Animal Crossing save, but I feel like I might have played this at some point on Animal Crossing as well. But either way, just the fact that I still own the original GameCube version of Animal Crossing, I do have a legitimate way of playing Excitebike, so technically, I own this game legally, and I have for like the past decade or so. So this is the title screen. You only have 3 options. You have Selection A, Selection B, and Design. Selection A is the main game mode where you go and race around tracks. This is kind of like the time trial mode. Selection B is also a time trial, but this is where you can compete against computer opponents, even though the computer opponents are not really that important, because it's basically just an alternate time trial mode. This is just if you want more of a challenge, because the computer opponents are honestly just giant jerks most of the time. And Design is the level editor, of course, which I'll be showing off maybe near the end of the video. But before I select any of these options, I actually want to reset the game a few times. Why exactly do I want to do that? Well, whenever you perform a soft reset in Excitebike, the music on the title screen slightly changes. I'm not entirely sure why it does that, but I'll demonstrate it here really quickly just so that you guys understand what I'm talking about. Now, just for reference, the main menu music is normally supposed to sound like this. And it'll always sound like that whenever you hard reset the game, but if you soft reset, you can get slightly different jingles to play, such as... and also... So I'm not really sure why the music changes. I assume the game was programmed in that way, because I always used to think that it was some sort of bug. I was never sure if the music was actually supposed to change every time I reset the game, and like I said, it only does that when you soft reset it. If you perform a hard reset, which would involve turning the console off and then powering it back on, then it would always give you the same jingle, but just pressing the reset button on the console would provide you with a different jingle almost every time. I just thought that was interesting, so let's move on to the actual actual game now. Or more specifically, let's move on to the point in the video where I spend 5 minutes explaining the game's mechanics before I actually get to playing it for real. We'll go with Selection A first. I actually don't like Selection A that much, mostly because you're not racing against anyone, it's just you on the track. I didn't used to play Excitebike that much when I was younger, but whenever I would play it, I would always choose Selection B because it had actual opponents that I could race against and it provided a bit more of a challenge. So you've got 5 different tracks to choose from. This screen is a little bit misleading though because there's more like 10 tracks. In order to complete a level in Excitebike, you have to beat the 3rd best time. If you end up beating the 1st best time, however, you end up playing a 2nd variation of the track you have selected. And once you've beaten that, then you move on to the next track. So for instance, if you beat the best time in track 1, you go to a different version of track 1. When you beat that, then you go on to track 2. It's really confusing and doesn't make a lot of sense at all. So we will go to track 1 for now. You don't need to complete any of those in numerical order. They're all available to you from the get-go, but we're just gonna start racing here. Yeah, there's the cameraman. I kinda like that though, because the cameraman actually turns around to face you when you're speeding on past him. So what exactly are we doing here? Well, we have to get the best time, as I mentioned before, but you have various ramps that you can jump off of. There's also these little grass patches on the ground that you need to avoid. Also these ramps that you can get some sick air on. Also, the physics are a little bit strange when you're jumping off the ramps. You do have air control in this game, like you can maneuver yourself in the air, kind of like how you can do that in Super Mario Brothers, except this game predates Super Mario Brothers by like a year, so technically it's a little bit more innovative than that, or at least it was doing it before Mario. So you can come to like almost a complete stop in midair. And it's also strange too, because when you tilt your bike back like that, you fly up to like the top of the screen and then you just kind of float back downwards. It's really strange physics. But the objective of all these levels is to just get over the ramps. Make sure you don't fall down though, because you can end up tumbling. If you land at a very awkward angle on any of the ramps, usually that results in your biker dude falling over. I still somehow managed to beat the best time though, despite the fact that I wasn't really even attempting to beat the level because I'm just trying to show off some mechanics. So you have 4 different lanes that you can drive around in. You can switch lanes by pressing either up or down on the D-pad. You can also go right off the track if you want as well. So if you just want to go drive around in the grass, you can do that too. Now, you also have a temperature gauge at the bottom of the screen. The temperature gauge is self-explanatory. It tells you how hot your engine currently is, and normally it increases when you're just accelerating. However, there's also a turbo feature, which you can activate by holding down the B button. It's really weird because you actually need to be holding only the B button in order for the turbo to work. If you're holding down A and B, it does absolutely nothing, so you have to actually let go of the A button and switch over to the B button in order for it to work. And as you can see, I just keep on falling over. So, when your guy does end up falling over, he ends up landing a few feet away from his bike. The distance at which he lands from his bike, whenever he takes a fall, seems to be almost random. Like, there doesn't seem to be any way to make it so that... Like it doesn't seem to be consistent. Whenever you fall down, it just places him away from his bike at a completely random distance. Sometimes it places him like right next to it, other times it places him really far away. And he'll run back to his bike automatically, but you can increase his speed by mashing the A button. Also, I hate that giant ramp right there. That giant ramp is just a huge pain in the ass. Like these ones right here, because it's almost like comprised of 3 different ramps. And when you end up falling down on it, like if you end up landing at an awkward angle and you take a tumble, you have to actually wait until your guy gets all the way to the bottom of the ramp before he can get back on his bike, and it's incredibly annoying. I always hated that. That obstacle is sent straight from hell, in my honest opinion. So we've already beaten the first track, and you may have noticed that after I beat the number 1 lap time in track number 1, it sent me to a different variation of track 1. So the layout was different, the palette color was the exact same though, but now we are on track 2. So the palette colors are different for all of the tracks. The layouts are not, so all the obstacles may look exactly the same, but they do have a different color scheme to represent that you are, in fact, playing a different track. Also, how am I beating all of these best times? I'm not even trying, I swear I'm not. I guess this game is just a lot easier than I remember it being, I'm not sure. Well, I mean, the game really isn't that easy. Well, the first few tracks are pretty simple and straightforward, but it gets a lot more difficult after a while. Then you have these obstacles right here, like these hurdles. There is a way to drive over the hurdles. What you have to do is that you have to perform a wheelie in order to get over them if you are planning on driving straight through them. The way you can perform a wheelie in this game is by holding left on the D-pad for a certain period of time. Don't hold it down for too long though, otherwise your bike, I should say, not your freaking car, holy crap. Yeah, your bike will tilt too far, you'll end up flipping over, and you'll fall off your bike. But you can also use this in order to get over some of these hurdle-like obstacles. If you don't do that, then you'll end up colliding with them and you'll end up flipping over. You'll end up crashing. Those boost pads on the ground right there will also decrease the temperature of your engine. It is kind of strange because, I mean, they are designed in a way that makes it look like when you drive over them, they'll grant you some sort of speed boost, but no. They just decrease the temperature of your engine. I almost said car again, good god. But yeah, it decreases the temperature of your engine so you can just use your turbo a lot more. Also, I just completely sucked at that one. I got a ranking of 8. Yeah, it's possible to get a ranking of 120 on some of these tracks. Like, if you're really, really bad at the game, doesn't really matter all that much, though. You have to get at least the third best time, like I said, and it shows you the third best time in the lower section of the screen. So, as you can see, it says 1 minute and 20 seconds, so that's the time I have to beat. The best time is 1 minute and 12, and I believe in order to go on to the second variation of these tracks, you need to beat the number 1 best time. You beat the third best time, you just end up going to the next track. Like, I'm on track 4 right now, so if I beat the third best time, I'll just end up going to track 5 instead of playing a second variation of the 4th track. Like I said, it works in a really strange way. I don't fully understand. Don't fully understand how it works. I also don't understand how the crashing mechanics work as well. Like, specifically, why it places me really far away from my bike sometimes when I crash, other times I'm placed, like, really close to it. Not only that, but I'm pretty sure that the last ramp that I crashed on, I'm pretty sure I had actually jumped over it. So how the heck did that even happen? Okay, that time I actually landed directly on top of it, which is what caused me to fall. Like I said, you can't hit these ramps at awkward angles, otherwise you're going to crash. Kind of reminds me of Motocross Madness in a way, even though this game predates Motocross Madness by like 14 years. Interestingly, Excitebike did take a bit of a Motocross Madness direction later on in its life, especially when Excitebike 64 was released. I have played Excitebike 64 in the past, not on my channel, but in my spare time, like many, many years ago. I have been planning on making a video of that for quite some time as well. That'll probably come at some point in the future. But I wanted to play the original NES Excitebike because, personally, I remember this one the most, even though I haven't played it all that much. And then the final track over here is track 5. So this one, the entire track here looks like it's just made entirely out of steel. Everything's just gray and void of color. I don't really like it that much. I don't know. There's just something about it that just rubs me the wrong way. It's like it's devoid of life. Also, the grass just suddenly turned blue, so it has like artificial coloring all of a sudden. And you just have advertisements for Nintendo on the sides of the stands over there, or the sides of the stadium, I should say. There's a little bit of attention to detail here, because you have a crowd in the back, and they all look like clones of themselves. They're all wearing green shirts. Yeah, sometimes you also have that guy who's just giving you a thumbs up, you know, giving you some encouragement. It's like, hey, you're doing good. You're doing good. I know you're crashing a lot, but just keep going. I believe in you. I believe in you. Oh, geez, I got a little bit of a speed boost right there. Yeah, sometimes when you fall over, that will happen. It'll play that animation instead, showing you that your bike has basically fallen over, but you're still on it, and you just have to wait for, again, a random period of time in order for your biker guy to get back on his bike automatically. Those giant patches of grass right there where the road just suddenly terminates, you can't boost over that. If you try using your turbo on that terrain, it doesn't do anything, but it will still cause your engine to overheat, so don't even bother trying to boost over it, because it won't work. These grass patches also slow you down, of course. and I just completely failed that level. Well, I mean, those are all the tracks. It's 5 tracks in total. So I basically showed you guys the entire Selection A mode. So then we can move on to Selection B. Now Selection B is not that different from Selection A. The only real difference is that you're competing against computer opponents, but every single track is the exact same. There is a little bit of an extra challenge though, because we do have opponents of course, and yeah, you can collide with them. And the way to dealing with these guys is that in order to knock these guys off their bike, you have to be in front of them. If you're behind them, you're the one who's going to end up getting knocked off their bike. And it does give you the potential to pull off some really dirty moves, like, you know, just going into the same lane as another driver, and then just colliding with them, like that right there, as you can see. I was able to take out that green guy. You also see that some of them will actually run across the track in order to get back on their bike, because some of them crash on the other side of the track, which is really strange, because I'm not sure why that never happens to my own driver here. Yeah, I just keep referring to him as Biker Guy, because I'm not sure if he has an official name. I don't believe he does. I'm not sure if Nintendo ever gave him an official name in subsequent Excitebike games. I don't believe they ever did. So he's just known as the Excitebike Racer. I believe that is the official terminology for him, if I'm not mistaken. And if you do manage to beat the game's best time on any track, it will replace it with your best time, so you can set new records, and it will save your record. So there's not really anything more to say about this mode in particular. Just racing against some computer opponents, and oh my god, that guy got some airtime right over there. Why do I constantly end a lot of my sentences with right over there? What is that all about? Am I starting to develop like speech patterns or something? I don't understand this. Also, what's really weird is that the draw distance for the other bikers doesn't appear to stretch all the way to the left side of the screen, but it's weird because the draw distance for the ramps does. Yeah, you see how the sprites just get erased, like, right before they even leave the left side of the screen? It's really odd. Also, something funny that you can do is that when the drivers are running across the track to get back on their bike, you can collide with them, but what happens is that it ends up knocking you off their bike. You can push them back a little bit so that it takes them a bit of a longer time to actually get back on their bike. It's not really useful in the slightest, because this is basically just a more difficult time trial mode, because you're not actually competing against these guys, because there's no HUD element telling you what position you're currently in, so there's not really any point into trying to compete with them. Like, you're not trying to compete for first place. Well, I mean, you are, but you know, the opponents are there to just make your life a living hell. That's the only reason they're even there. If I can actually try and collide with one of these guys, yeah, because sometimes it doesn't always show them, like, falling off their bike and trying to run back towards it. Sometimes it'll just show their bike falling. So, let me see if I could possibly wait for some other guy to come along. Yeah, see, every single time this happens. Yeah, what's also a bit of a jerk move is that sometimes when you're trying to get back on your bike, another racer will come along and just knock you back off again, so you have to get back on. Like, you have no invincibility frames, so they can just keep knocking you off all the freaking time. They can also suddenly swerve into your lane and knock you off your bike, so they're just annoying. Yeah, see, I was able to do it right there, guys. You might have noticed that I was able to crash into that guy. All it did was just knock me off my bike, but I was able to push him back a little bit. It's not useful in the slightest, though. Okay, I have no idea what exactly I managed to do here, but yeah, I just have this guy stuck in between a wall right here, and he just keeps colliding with me, and he keeps falling off. I'm not letting him go anywhere. So that's all there really is to say about the main game mode, so I want to go to the level editor now. Now, there is one feature in particular that differentiates the Animal Crossing version of Excitebike from the original. For some reason, in the Animal Crossing version, the save and load options in the level editor don't exist. They were removed. It's unknown why exactly they were removed, because it didn't really seem like Nintendo had a reason to remove them, but they were reinstated in future re-releases of Excitebike. So let's actually talk about the level editor now. So design is where you can go to actually design a level. Save and load, self-explanatory. reset just resets the level if you want to create a new one. Play mode A is where you can play your custom level by yourself, and play mode B is where you can play it with opponents. It is kind of cool how you can actually place opponents within your own custom level and they'll drive along it. Let's try designing a level then, in that case. Now, the level editor is not very descriptive in the slightest. All of the objects are placed in different categories and they're all represented by different letters of the alphabet. But I can tell you that letters A to H are where all of the ramps are stored, and letters I to S are the miscellaneous objects. So if you hold down the A button, you can progress forward in the level editor. If you want to create gaps in between objects, that's what that's useful for. You can press the B button to actually place an object. So A is just a small ramp, B is like a medium-sized triangular ramp, C is the largest out of them all. All of the ramps in this game are triangle-shaped. Then you have D, which is like a slightly flatter triangular ramp. And then you have E, which is a much thinner triangular ramp, but it looks a lot more awkward because it has like a really steep slope. It looks really bizarre. And then if you press F, you have a slightly shorter ramp, and the top is a little bit off-center than the other ramps. And then you have G, which is just a mirrored version of F, except for some reason it looks a lot more detailed than the F ramp, which is odd. And then H, you have the tiny ramp, the ones that you can actually get a considerable amount of air off of. What's really strange though is that you can only place these ramps on one side of the track, because most of the miscellaneous obstacles you can place on either side, but for these ramps in particular, you can only place them on the left side of the track, which is really weird. It's kind of peculiar, but then we go to I, which are the hurdle obstacles. So the letter I is used for the hurdle on the left side of the track, and then J is for the hurdle on the right side. And then you have K, which are the tiny patches of grass on the road. L is the exact same thing, except they're just placed on the opposite side. M and N are the boost pads. M is for boost pad on the left side, N is for boost pad on the right. O, P, and Q are the gigantic patches of grass where the road just suddenly ends. The ones that slow you down significantly and you can't boost on. So O is for the right side, P is for the left side, and then Q is for a gigantic section that encapsulates all 4 lanes of the track. And then R is the gigantic hill that I absolutely despise. And finally S is this weird diving board platform. Not even sure what this design is, but it looks kind of cool. So we're just going to make an absolute mess of this track. We're going to make a complete mess here. So you can also press the A button to confirm your selection as well. You can just go to the other side of the track here. I'm just going to place a few of these down. Yeah, there we go. Just place about maybe 5 of them. And for good measure, we'll place some gigantic hills. Very nice indeed. Maybe place about 3 of these in rapid succession. I'm not that much of a masochist, so I'm not gonna try and overuse them too much. Maybe place a few hurdles here. Yeah, there we go. Get a little bit of a zigzag challenge going. Have to test your zigzag skills or your wheelie skills. And then just to slow the pace of the race down a little bit, maybe put a few gigantic patches of grass here. Yeah, sure, let's just make this the slowest Excitebike track imaginable. You know what would be cool though? If Nintendo were to re-release Excitebike, but give it like online features, so that whenever someone created a custom track, they would be able to share it online with other people, and you could download them and play them, similar to what they've already done with Super Mario Maker. I'm not suggesting they create like an Excitebike Maker, but, well, I mean, Excitebike Maker would be a pretty interesting concept, I would think. You could have like different skins, just like in Super Mario Maker, like representing the different eras of gaming, because there was a 16-bit Excitebike, and actually, the 16-bit Excitebike remake featured playable Mario characters in it. It was kind of like a Mario Excitebike crossover. As for Excitebike 64 though, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, Excitebike 64 was full 3D. It wasn't side-scrolling like the original Excitebike games were. So not sure how exactly they would implement that into the game. Also, you can't make these tracks too long, because what'll happen is that the game will automatically place down a finish line after a while. So you can't make these tracks like overly long. I mean, you can increase the speed. Okay, yeah, it just did it right there actually. I mean, you can increase the length though by setting the amount of laps, which is what we're doing right now. So after you place down the finish line, you can select the amount of laps that you would like to race for. You can choose any number between 1 and 9, but because I'd like to preserve my sanity, I'm just going to set it to 1 for now. So after you finish building your track, you can press the B button to go back to the main menu of the level editor, and now you can choose to play either mode A or mode B, and let's do it. Let's go and test out our crappy level here. yeah, you'll see that the third place time is only 8 seconds, and the best time is 0. So we have to actually set the best time ourselves. So let's try and do it then. I already spilled over. Yeah, see, it's like I have to wait for a certain amount of time. Oh my god, dude. Yeah, the only problem with having all of these platforms placed together so close to one another is that you can't land on them correctly. You always end up falling over. You always end up crashing. Oh yes, very good. Oh yeah, very fast race. Very fast race right here. Well, I can try doing the wheelie thing. Oh my god, I actually kind of got through it. Holy crap. Yeah, here we go. Very good. Well, I mean, you can still kind of accelerate on the solid parts. The solid parts of the track. Like parts of the track where there is actual course to race on. And then just get through the labyrinth of ramps right here. Very fast race. Very good indeed. I'd like to see how the AI will get through this. I'm very interested. Alright, well there we go. 1 minute and 7 seconds. Not too bad, I would say. So now that we set our lap time for that, we have to go and set it for mode B now. So let's go and see how the computer opponents handle this one. Will they be intelligent? Well, let's go and find out. Jeez, these guys take off at like different speeds. How are you guys gonna handle this? Very good? Okay, no. These guys also die. Okay. They actually just fall off the level entirely, or they just fall off the platform. Oh my god, I hate that so much. It's like I can't tell how long it's gonna take either, because it's just completely random. Yeah, he gets like pushed directly off the platform. Like, see how long I had to wait for here? It seems like performing a wheelie kind of helps, but not all the time. Good god, I'm getting like really unlucky with it. I mean, I can't tell because you can't visibly see your rider falling off and trying to get back to his bike. I don't know if mashing the A button would make it go faster though. Maybe it would. But I can't tell though. There's absolutely no way of telling. Yeah, there we go. There we go. You guys are going really slow. Well, I'll just knock you off. There we go. Nice move right there. Very dirty move. Yeah, a lot of sprite flickering going on because there's too many sprites appearing on the screen. There's only one downside to Excitebike. It's that there's a little bit of flickering, a little bit of graphical oddities going on here and there, which again doesn't surprise me. I mean, this was 1984. Technology was a lot more primitive back then. That guy just phased right through me. Yeah, every time you finish a race, your Excitebike racer will always pop a wheelie and put his finger in the air as if he won the race, regardless of whether or not he actually got a good time. He always thinks that he's done a good job, when in reality he's probably the worst bike racer on the entire planet. Not qualified for this profession in the slightest. So after you've set times on all of your tracks, you can go and save the track. I believe the amount of time it takes to save the track depends on how many objects you place down, because sometimes it can take quite a while. Like, you just have to wait on this saving screen, and there's no indication as to how far along it is in the saving process. Like, there's no progress bar or anything, because this was before those things were commonplace in video games. Of course, you can also load a custom track, and that will load the track that you made. God, it almost seems like this takes even longer. Is there any way to cancel this? I don't know, I almost feel like I soft-locked the game, because this is taking quite a while. Wow, 1984 was a fantastic year for video games, wasn't it? I mean, you had a cartridge-based system, which pretty much meant that there were, like, no loading times in between screens. And here we are with a loading screen from an NES game that's been on the screen for like an entire minute now. Yeah, I think I may have soft-locked the game, guys, because it's not loading. So you know what I'm gonna do? I think I'm just going to end the video now, because that's all I've wanted to talk about regarding Excitebike. It's a pretty simple bike racing game, still innovative for its time. I mean, considering the fact that there was a level editor and you could actually save the levels that you made, and you can reload them. You know, one of the early instances of being able to load and save in a video game, like this was even before Legend of Zelda. So you could say that Excitebike was responsible for bringing a lot of innovations that are commonplace in video games today. I guess one of the innovations it brought as well is incredibly long and tedious loading screens, but thankfully most games don't have that feature. It's usually the really bad ones that do. The ones that haven't been well optimized. Yeah, I really don't know what's going on. Like, I just press loading and it's... Can I do anything? No, it's soft-locked. I broke the game. I crashed it. So Excitebike is certainly a classic racing game of its time. Not one that I used to play a lot when I was younger, but whenever I did, it was usually to just, you know, kill some time, maybe just kill a few minutes trying to beat my time on various tracks, trying to go for the fastest time possible. There are still some places where you can purchase the game. There is, of course, the Wii Virtual Console. The only thing I need to mention about the Wii Virtual Console, though, is that Nintendo has finally disabled the feature that allows you to add Nintendo points to your account. So if you're still using the old Wii shopping channel, you can't add Nintendo points to your account anymore, which means if you have 0 Nintendo points, well, you're shit out of luck. You won't be able to download anything. There is an alternative, and that is the Wii U Virtual Console. I'm pretty sure Excitebike was re-released for that as well, so maybe just go download it on that instead. I think it was released for the 3DS Virtual Console as well, but I'm not entirely sure about that. I'll have to go and double check. And there is, of course, the NES Classic, which is the most recent re-release of Excitebike, except the NES Classic is not being manufactured by Nintendo anymore, although I do think they are planning on bringing it back sometime later this year. Or, you know, you could just be like me and just play it on an emulator. Technically, I do own this game legally. I still own my copy of Animal Crossing for the GameCube, and even though I haven't been able to find Excitebike on my current save, there's still a chance that I could sometime in the future, because it's pretty much a random event. Sometimes the villagers will place a notice on the bulletin board in the middle of town, saying that they've hidden one of the NES games in a certain acre, but it doesn't happen all the time, and I should really go and check what the exact odds are for that event occurring, because I would really like to try and get the other ones, because right now I only have NES Tennis on my current save. Also, I really should play Animal Crossing again very soon, but anyway, I'm getting off topic. So I guess you can go and play it and see where one of Nintendo's more obscure franchises got its start, but chances are you'll probably get bored of it after maybe 10 or 15 minutes, because there's not a whole lot to do in this game anyway. But I mean, the level editor pretty much makes it so that there's an infinite supply of tracks you could play. You just have to build them all yourself, challenge your friends to tackle one of your dastardly creations, or better yet, just play Motocross Madness, because frankly, that's a much better bike racing game. Play Motocross Madness 2 in particular, because it's by far the best in the series. Besides, fans have managed to port most of the original Motocross Madness 1 tracks to the sequel anyway. Before I go off on even more tangents, I'm gonna end this video now. Thanks for watching as always, guys. I'll see you in the next video I make. Later!